Hello, friends. We're back with episode 181 of the Our Weekly Highlights podcast. If you're new to the show, this is the weekly podcast where we talk about the latest happenings that we see in our highlights and additional resources every single week at ourweekly.org, your weekly curated content for all things news and other awesome events in the art community. My name is Eric Nance, and I'm delighted you join us from wherever you are around the world. And joining me, as always, it seems like October is already here. Where did the time go, my friend? But I'm joined by my awesome co-host, Mike Thomas. Mike, where did the time go? I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either that 2024 is almost wrapping up, coming to a close here. But we're going to try to enjoy what we have left of it. I'm looking forward to 2025 coming soon.
Absolutely. So many of us are probably in the midst of these year-end activity wrap-ups, getting releases out the door, getting other things documented. I'm definitely in that mode right now, but this is always the highlight of my day, no pun intended, for what we do here today. So I'm happy to record this awesome episode with you as always, Mike. And our issue this week has been curated by Tony Elharbar, who didn't have a big break between his last curation, but he's helping with our kind of scheduling switches here and there. But if you're not familiar with the Our Weekly effort, we have a rotating list of curators that step in every single week, so we can kind of spread the work around. But it's all community effort driven. But as always, he had tremendous help from our fellow Our Weekly team members and contributors like you all around the world with your pull requests and other suggestions. As I saw the highlights come through in our little voting at the end of the weekend, it was very obvious to me what I was going to lead off with on this episode, because I am delighted, super excited to share the news that an effort that we have been covering on this show, whether in the highlights section or in our additional finds for over a year, has officially hit CRAN, and we are talking about the RIX package, authored by Bruno Rodriguez, to help facilitate the use of the NIX package manager for reproducible data science workflows entirely in R. I am, again, super excited, and huge congratulations to Bruno on getting this release out. It is absolutely monumental to see this happen. And as he alludes to in the blog post that we'll have linked to as always, there has been over 15 months of RIX being in development, over 1,300 commits, 143 closed issues, 175 closed pull requests, and not only that, not only is RIX on CRAN itself as of earlier last week, it is also under the rOpenSci umbrella, another major achievement. And frankly, when you think about it, it makes total sense. We are talking about a huge boost in making reproducible data science workflows. And rOpenSci is one of its biggest core principles is the idea of reproducible data science. So it does seem like a match made in heaven to me. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. And as a result of being under the rOpenSci umbrella, one of the ways that a package or an effort gets onboarded is a very robust and a very transparent peer review process to get the package into rOpenSci, which we can actually look at in real time, but also I'll have the link to in the show notes, the very pull request or the issue with all of the review feedback and all the review steps that Bruno has done to address feedback. It's all there, all transparent. It was looks like a relatively smooth process. Lots of great documentation there. It's another showcase just how robust the rOpenSci effort is for getting high quality software under their umbrella. So with those notes out of the way, you may be new to this effort and wondering just what the heck NIX actually is. We're not talking about Linux. We're not talking about Unix. We're talking about NIX, and NIX is a package manager under the hood, not too dissimilar to what some Linux distributions do for distributing software in their respective systems. Distributions such as Ubuntu and Debian use the apt package manager. Red Hat, Fedora use an RPM-based distribution system. Arch is definitely those not for the faint of heart, has their own custom repository. Nix, however, you don't have to use Nix on Linux. You can actually use it on Mac OS as well as Windows itself, thanks to WSL or the Windows subsystem for Linux. So no matter which OS you're on, chances are you could get Nix up and running. And one of the ways that we recommend, I know Bruno recommends this as well, to get started with Nix in a very smooth way is using what's called the determinate systems installer of Nix. That's a vendor that's trying to bring Nix to a first class way to enterprises and in open source and the like. And I have a good friend on that team named Martin Wimpress, who is helping a lot of their documentation and other advocacy. So getting Nix on your system, I highly recommend checking out the determinate Nix installer. We're also going to have linked in the show notes a guide called 02 Nix if you want to get more familiar with what's happening with Nix and trying out a few different ways you can set up development environments. But as an R user, Rix is going to handle a lot of this integration with Nix for you in the sense that you can bootstrap the necessary manifest files to tell the Nix package manager not only the version of R to install in this isolated development environment, but pull down the packages based on a snapshot in time. In total, Nix has over 80,000 packages across the entire spectrum of software. And R is a first-class citizen in Nix, along with other languages like Python and Julia and many others. So what Rix is going to do is help you bootstrap these environments, and then to be able to say on my host machine, which may or may not even have R installed, you can have this, again, self-contained development environment ready to go, reproducible. You could commit these files that are generated, which are called default.nix, as well as a .r profile file that's going to help the R session specifics. That could be on your GitHub repo. And if you have a collaborator that's also running Nix, they can pull down that exact same environment. That is huge. And if that doesn't sound familiar, you might say that does sound kind of similar to what Docker would give you and sounds similar to what RM would do from a package management perspective. You're not wrong. They are somewhat similar in that sense of the overall goal, but the way they achieve it is a bit different. Docker is, of course, based in container technology, and that can be a heavy footprint depending on your perspective, but it also, admittedly, has a lot more mind share in most of the DevOps sector and even in sectors of data science with things like the Rocker project that we speak highly about. So Nix may not always be right for your use case, but I am very intrigued by the promise it brings you. And full disclosure, I've been using Nix on a brand new server I have here in this basement a few feet behind me, which has been a great learning experience in and of itself to have more reproducible software stack for my infrastructure. But I have been putting Nix through a couple tests in my open source work. And what's even more intriguing is that on top of the R environment that I can bootstrap for Rix, I can also easily add in other utilities such as a custom instance of what's called VS Codium to have its own IDE in that same environment and bring it up as a GUI and have it ready to go. It's completely segregated from the rest of my host system, but I can tailor it to my liking. I can put extensions in there. I can have a pretty neat experience with R on Nix in a custom IDE to boot. Like the possibilities are almost endless with this, and that's why I'm still learning the ropes on this quite a bit. I will say I haven't had a perfect experience with it just yet. There was an instance which, if you're using R on a Linux system, you're probably all too accustomed to this, where I was installing a package, I believe it was called RAG or something like that, where it needed an image library, development libraries to help compile. And for whatever reason, when Rix was bootstrapping this development environment, it didn't pick up that I needed that extra library. So I had to manually add that in. So there's going to be, I think, some cases that are still getting worked out, but the future is certainly bright here. My other picky wish that I know has been mentioned in the Rix issue tracker, for those of us that are coming from an RM mindset where we have projects that have an RM lock file, oh my goodness, it sure would be nice to import that directly into Rix and then magically get the package installation. There's a lot of engineering required to do that. So I'm not surprised that it hasn't landed in just yet. But I am getting a bit more, to say I want this feature more and more because I'm not going to exaggerate here, Mike. I probably have at my day job over 90 projects that use RM in some way. And if I want to convert all those to Nix, that's a lot of manual effort to do. So having some kind of automated way to take a lock file, magically, transform that into the necessary default.nix and getting the right package hashes, that would be massive. I have seen Python having these custom utilities that tie that poetry framework for their package management with Nix. I think they call it poetry to Nix, where they can somehow do this magical inference of a poetry lock file, which looks a lot similar to an RM lock file, if you're familiar with that. And they can somehow parse out then from the Nix package manager which Python packages to install and what hashes that correspond to that particular version. So I have been spoiled by seeing that on like the Python ecosystem. I believe they have a similar thing for Rust, maybe for Julia as well. So maybe it's a matter of time. I don't know. But once that comes in, yeah, that's going to really ease the onboarding even further for those that are coming from a different framework, such as RM to Rix. But nonetheless, I don't want that to discount my huge excitement for this. I think it's a huge step to seeing Nix really taking a solid footing in the realm of reproducible data science. And also in the post that we're going to link to, Bruno has a short little 5-minute tutorial video to get you up and running with Rix quite quickly. But we invite you to check out the rest of his blog because there are literally about 14 or 13 of these other posts that chronicle this entire journey, which you can tell is interspersed with his learning journey of Nix along the way. It's great to kind of see that evolution happen, and it's all been open, so to speak, for us to watch. So, yes, am I excited? Oh, heck yes, I am, because the future does look pretty bright here. I'm interested to see what others in the R community do with Nix. I've had some brief conversation with George Stagg about it. He's intrigued by the possibilities as well. But yeah, the future's looking pretty bright.
So I'll be honest with you, Eric, before the Rix package came out, Nix was sort of intimidating to me. I had built up a lot of personal education around Docker and containerized environments. And when Nix came along, I don't know, it just felt like too big for me to wrap my brain around at the time. I've switched since then because this Rix package makes me feel, and the 5-minute tutorial video that Bruno has put together showcasing, how to get up and running with this package makes me feel like it's so much more accessible. And I think that sort of our functions, which I think there's only 6 or 7 in this package right now that help you get up and running with a Nix environment for your R project, take care of a lot of the things that may have intimidated me in the first place about Nix, and sort of make it much easier to get started with. And if you watch this 5-minute video, you start to realize that maybe it's not all that intimidating after all. And I think, one of the potential benefits, as you alluded to, Eric, of having Nix as compared to maybe the Docker and RM environments is that your Docker images that you create can get fairly heavy fairly quickly. And I think that there may be use cases out there where Nix would do the same thing, but the end product would be a lot more lightweight. That end environment might be a lot more lightweight. And that might be really important depending on the type of project that you're working on, depending on where you're trying to deploy to. On the edge or something like that, a system that doesn't have a lot of space to store, large Docker images. So I'm really intrigued by the Nix project. I think this Rix package makes it a lot more accessible. I think the fact that this package is now part of the R OpenSci project says a lot about the amount of work that Bruno and the others who've contributed to this package have put into it, and its potential importance in data science as a whole. So very excited to see it hit CRAN, and very excited to start playing around with it, because right now at this point there's no excuse. I think Bruno has done all of the work to make this as easy as possible to get started with for our developers like us.
Yeah, and speaking of the ways of making it easier, when you look at what the Rix package offers you, there are two other additional nuggets that even go above and beyond, in my opinion. One of which is being able to leverage another service out there for Nix package binaries called Cachix to be able to help build an environment and have it cached there on their infrastructure. That way, when somebody pulls it down, is not having to recompile packages from source. It'll get binary versions of the packages and other dependencies of that particular project, which, again, if you're familiar with running R on Linux, you love having at your disposal binary installations, because that cuts the installation time from sometimes hours to minutes, if not seconds. So you'll definitely want to, you'll appreciate that when you find yourself in those situations. But he's also put this additional nugget here. Bruno has also been one of the bigger proponents of the targets package by my good friend Will Landau. And there is a function in here called tar nix GA, which will help you run a targets pipeline bootstrapped by Nix on GitHub Actions. Oh my goodness, like that's almost sensory overload of all the integrations there. But what a great fit for having an automated data science pipeline, but then Nix having the full control on your installation of your dependencies. That's massive. I can't wait to play with that myself.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I think that Bruno has focused on those types of applications where I think Nix can be the most powerful. In terms of GitHub's actions, we have functions here that are wrappers, as you said, around building an environment on GitHub Actions and making sure that after it's run the first time, everything is cached on that Cachix server, so it's going to run a lot faster. The second time sort of makes me think of Docker Hub. Maybe you could sort of equate Cachix to that, but I think there's some differences there. But I think the idea is fairly the same, right? So yeah, I think just the applicability and the usefulness and utility that Bruno has built in to sort of the concepts behind this package are pretty incredible.
Yeah, so I invite you to not only go to his posts, but also the Rix package site. Again, very well documented. There are a lot of vignettes, and they're ordered in a logical way to kind of start when you're brand new to Rix up until some of the very advanced use cases. So the website looks absolutely fantastic. Again, a great fit for our OpenSci in general. So again, it's always a team effort when these packages come up. So I want to make sure I give kudos not just to Bruno, but also Philip Bowman, who is one of the co-authors of the package. I've seen their work on the GitHub repo. There's been a lot of commits, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, this is only the beginning. Like I can see lots of improvements coming along to Rix, and especially as adoption grows. Heck, I if I get more time, I want to help contribute to this RM piece of it, because again, that is somewhat scratching my own itch, but I can't be the only one that wants to transfer some legacy projects that maybe to have a more robust workflow with Nix down the road. So we'll be watching this quite closely. And one other mind-blowing thing that, again, when you have the Nix package that kind of blew me away when I first did this, is that with Rix itself, if you want to get one of these files, bootstrap, or the set of files bootstrap for a particular project, you don't even need R on your host system to even get Rix running at first. Because with the Nix package manager, you can have a special command that basically shells out to grabbing the R environment that Bruno has baked into the package on GitHub, and then pull that down interactively in what I call an interactive shell. You can then run Rix on that directory and get the necessary files in that temporary environment and then exit out. I guess it's similar to what Docker gives you, but it's still, I can't believe that's even possible. So on this new laptop that I just got, I don't have R on it. It's all Rix. Rix or Docker. There's no R trace of it because each of the project has its own environment. And I didn't even need R to get Rix up and running. What magic time are we in, Mike? I just can't believe it.
Gotta love it.
Well, we're going to exercise a little bit different part of our brain on this next highlight, Mike. We got a fun little programming adventure for one of our fellow R Weekly curators this week. And this blog post, this highlight, has been authored by Jonathan Carroll. And he is continually pushing the envelope and trying to solve what seems like almost all of the programming problems that he can come across over the next year or so that he's been doing this series. And he comes to us this week to talk about in-place modifications in R and other languages. And this all stemmed from a recent post or a video that he saw based on a problem, which in a nutshell involved having an array of integers, and then you define some integer k, and then another integer he's calling multiplier, where the task is you've got k operations to perform on this vector of numbers. And in each of these operations or iterations, you've got to find the minimum value of this vector. And of course, if there are multiple, ties in this, you just take whatever appears first. Then you replace that number you found with that number times the multiplier, and then rinse and repeat until you've exhaustively gone through all these k iterations. So when the video, he saw that there was a pretty elegant way in Python to do this. And in particular, this Python solution is taking advantage of what it has built in, a compound assignment type operator, the star equal to that result. That is, again, calling it an in-place modification. Well, R itself doesn't quite have that built-in operator. He does have a solution, but that solution is, technically speaking, making a copy of that updated number every time. You can inspect this when you look at the memory kind of hash of an object in R, and you would see that after that operation, which looks like it's in place overriding, no, it's not. It's actually making a copy of that object, updated copy of it. And this is another case where in John's R solution, he has to use a for loop. He's not able to use the map function because the iterations actually depend on what happened before it. So
Markov chain.
Oh, give me flashbacks to grad school, my friend. That's some frightening stuff. But yes, Markov chains for the win here. So as he's going through this, he realizes that the closest thing that he's seen in the R ecosystem to this in-place modifier is from the Magrider package. If you've used this before, it's the percent sign, less than sign, greater than sign, and another percent sign. I just short aside here, this operator has given me fits for debugging, so I stopped using it many years ago. Did you have those same issues?
Yeah, well? I've heard the same. Yeah, stories. Never used it. It scared me just visually to look at, but I had heard similar things.
Yeah, I lost a few hours one time. I was trying to be too cute with a dplyr pipeline, and I wreaked havoc on myself. And I was like, nope, not going to do that again. Nonetheless, as John's exploring, what possible ways could he kind of replicate this in-place modifier in R itself? Because his motivation is, when you have a small variable name, it's kind of easy to take a reference to that variable that probably is a vector of some numbers, and then in the square brackets, call a function on that vector to grab the right element, but then reassign that a new value. He says in this, well, what if that variable name is long? I'm going to have to keep typing that over and over again. Is there a more convenient way to do this? Turns out, not really easily, unless you take some rather risky shortcuts. And that's where I'm kind of getting to this meat of the solution here. Again, this is giving me flashbacks to some bad practices I did in my earlier days, where you're looking at the parent environment of the function, that's being called in, and then using a combination of the assign operator and then the deparse substitute for that variable and injecting into basically a copy of that, a hidden copy of it. Oh, you talk about debugging nightmares. A lot of times in my early days, I would either get code from my old projects or a collaborator that did this. And it was so difficult to make heads or tails on what was happening there. But that is kind of the closest John was able to achieve with this solution. But he acknowledges he would not really want to do that in production, that kind of solution. So he started to look at other languages and what they offer. And sure enough, in the Julia language, there are ways to have this in place operator with a slightly different syntax, or they call mutating, where they give the name of a function, but then an exclamation point afterwards, and then feeding in the name of the object that you want to modify in place. And sure enough, he shows her this example of like reversing the order of numbers that you can in Julia get that in place modification of a simple vector without having to call the name more than once. So that's pretty slick that Julia has that. And he experimented with that a little bit more, started to look at, how could he do more elegant solutions to this, kind of doing a little hacking around it. And so he's got at the end of the post a little modified version of this that's based on like vector operations. He calls it set_if. And sure enough, it kind of does the job, but he's wondering if he could make that even easier, and if maybe there's an R solution after all. So another update at the end of this post, turns out John did end up writing a solution to this in R after all. He's got a package called Vec that's available on GitHub. We'll link to it in the show notes with some of these features kind of baked in. And he said that there are some suggestions already from members of the community and basically what Vec is going to do is give you a new vector class that is going to help with some of these in-place modifying and other optimized operations with vectors. So again, great to see this. I haven't actually seen this yet. And then, so it was a great exploration into what's possible with these in-place operators and kind of the learning journey of seeing R not quite having enough. And then in the end, like anything, you don't know if you don't see something there, write a package for it. So fun journey nonetheless, and a good little brain teaser once again that enters the highlights here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to, I guess, just see how a leak code problem could be, as Jonathan, I feel like often does, push to its limits in a lot of different ways and then turned in an R package that potentially may have some practical applications for folks looking to do this type of in-place replacement, if you will, without consuming more memory than necessary, as we have typically had to do in R. And this new Vec package that he's created is pretty interesting right now. It looks like it's fairly early on in its life. There are a couple of issues out there looking for folks to help implement some generics for these Vec objects, which are this new class of vectors that hopefully will be able to do some of the things that John mentions in the blog post, but have a lot more extensibility than what we get out of the box in base R with vectors. So that's pretty interesting as well. It looks like in the GitHub issues, there's some discussions around this concept of broadcasting, which wasn't a term I believe that I saw in the blog post, but I think it intersects with maybe some work that Davis Vaughn has done as well on an R package called RRay, which I'm taking a look at now. So I guess this is all, pretty interesting stuff, as we're fairly in the weeds here, as Jonathan often does, in terms of taking a look at really the internals of R. And I really love the comparisons to Python and Julia, and taking a look at, what's available over there and bringing it potentially into the R ecosystem. I feel like that's a concept that we see more and more of nowadays. I've seen a lot of conversation lately about the polars package in Python and its potential inspiration from the tidyverse, right? So we have, I feel like, a lot of cross pollination going on to try to build the best products possible, and take a look at, what are the best concepts across all programming languages, such that when we do create something new, we're trying to create the best version of it. So very interesting blog post by John. Cool thing about open source is that we can, develop something that somebody else can use pretty quickly here when we come up with an idea. So I highly recommend checking out the VEC package if this is a topic that is of interest to you.
Absolutely. We got that linked in the show notes as well. And certainly, if not only is John's, post insightful about his current take on these solutions, there's always like, I don't want to call it a history lesson per se, but he was venturing into some of the ideas of other programming languages. Some of them definitely have a long history, you might say. Even this language that he references called APL, which at first I thought was a license abbreviation, but no, that literally stands for a programming language, which has a book itself dedicated to it. So I love the way he intersperses kind of the lessons he's learned from these programming, brain teasers, these exercises, but seeing the mindset across whatever languages are doing. So certainly, if you want to sharpen your dev toolbox, John's blog is a great place to go. And rounding out, we're going to get a bit, back to the practical side of data science in our last highlight here, because we have a very great showcase of some of the valuable insights that we've seen from recent sessions of the Data Science Hangout, which is hosted by Rachel Dempsey. And as of recently, her new co-host is also the author of our last highlight today, Libby Heron, who has just joined Posit as a contractor for helping with the Data Science Hangout and also Posit Academy. She authors this terrific post on the Posit blog called Data Career Insights, Lessons from 4 Senior Leaders in the Data Space. So we're going to walk through 4 of these examples here in our roundup here. But first, I just want to mention the Hangout is a great place, a great venue for those that are looking at learning from others in the community on their data science journey. If you're not familiar with the effort, there is what we call a featured leader or a featured, maybe co-leaders that Rachel talks with and Libby talks with as well in the session. But it's a welcoming environment. Anyone at all are welcome to join, no matter which industry, no matter which spectrum of data science you fall under. I had the pleasure of being on that about a year or so ago. It was a great time. We've learned a lot, even just through the questions that we would get from the audience, and the chat is always on fire, as they say, whenever those sessions are on. There's lots of awesome insights on there. So she has links to all that in the blog post that we're mentioning here. But we're going to give our take on some of the lessons that are highlighted in this post here. So the first insight here is focusing on learning how things work and not being afraid of this feeling that you should already know how things work. Boy, does this resonate a lot. So this came from a conversation with Jamie Warner, who is a managing director at Plymouth Rock Assurance, where she was talking about, you may have heard some advice before, but in the data science world, but there may be a legacy process, a legacy model that it may be explained to you, but then there may be other situations where you may not know exactly how something works. But when you are inquisitive, I should say, and you talk to a subject matter expert about, what is the mechanics behind this, getting around their thought process, that is amazingly helpful. People end up being a wonderful resource. You can only do so much on internet searches in your company's intranet or whatnot. Getting to the source of an effort or an author of a tool and getting to know their mindset on how things work, this is going to help resonate or help illuminate a lot of ideas for you. There are times where I, again, will have imposter syndrome about some of the Bayesian methods that we use in our team on various tools. And in past, I would say, oh my goodness, Eric, you got a PhD. You should know how Bayesian works. No, I don't know how a lot of the Bayesian algorithms work, and that's okay, because I can talk to some of my brilliant teammates who have authored these solutions, and lo and behold, we had a great project that we're about to release in production that incorporates some, fairly standard with a little sugar on top Bayesian models for clinical designs. But I was not shy about learning about why they chose certain approaches for like a binomial approximation versus a normal approximation and things like that. So I still have to catch myself sometimes. I'm thinking, oh, Eric, you've been in that company for 15 years. You should know about that process. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's better to ask than to not ask at all. That's my biggest takeaway from that. So moving on to another great advice, and this one coming from JJ Allaire, who is the founder of Posit. This part is titled "Getting Clear About What You Like Doing, and then finding teammates that are excited by the stuff that you don't really like doing." So in JJ's example, he mentions that he enjoyed, bootstrapping these companies or founding these companies, such as our studio, which became Posit. But he's not exactly one that likes a lot of the managing kind of stuff that goes with, running your own company. And I'd imagine, Mike, you deal with this quite a bit in your daily work as well. So in JJ's opinion, one of the best decisions he made was helping expand his team to help with a lot of those managerial, administrative type tasks of running a company, so that he could focus on what he's interested in, is product development and really getting into the technical weeds of these solutions, which if you follow JJ's path of our studio and now Posit, you have seen how active JJ has been in ecosystems like R Markdown, now Quartal, and other efforts as well. It's not just that he's a founder of Posit. He is one of their top engineers in getting these efforts off the ground. So all you have to do is check the GitHub repo and you can see him on top of many issues, on top of many pull requests. He is really in that. But he's surrounded himself with people like Tarif and others at Posit that are helping running, the enterprise aspects of a company, while he gets to really do what he is passionate about. Again, that product development and getting into the technical bits of these products that he's working on. So really great insights there. And each of these, kind of summaries here, there are direct links to the recordings of these actual Hangouts on YouTube, the archived Zoom, Hangout sessions. So if you want to hear it again, from the source, you're able to do that. But there's some more nuggets, Mike. Why don't you take us through those?
No, that's some great advice from JJ, especially as somebody running a business that I can definitely appreciate and probably need to listen to a little bit more about delegating and making sure that you're focusing specifically on the most important parts of your job function. Two more that we have in this blog post are from Emily Riederer and Ben Arancibia. Emily's is all about essentially making sure or understanding that, sometimes the less flashy parts of data science, maybe not building the fanciest machine learning or now it's AI, right, model, maybe the more gratifying parts of your data science job and your data science journey as well. And that it's important to, even as we see, in all the marketing hype, that the machine learning and the AI and the ML stuff is maybe the stuff that gets the most press out there. Taking the time to learn the maybe less sexy parts of data science is really important to not only building your foundation, but you might find that sometimes those are the most interesting parts of your day-to-day work, and being open to all of the different facets of data science, and understanding that maybe there are some of these facets that are underappreciated, but might essentially provide you with the most gratitude in your job on a day-to-day basis. One that I can think of is R package development and R package management. It's something that I absolutely love to do. I love to be able to build an R package that somebody else can install and run on their own machine, and all of the different, less glamorous things, right, that go into maintaining that package, ensuring that all of the different components of that package and the different requirements that go into in terms of files and things like that go into ensuring that your R package is robust and, less less prone to troubleshooting or errors for somebody else as possible, is something that I actually get a lot of gratification from, and it's why we build a lot of our packages, both open source and proprietary, at Catchbrook for others to use. So I really appreciated that advice there. Emily always comes with really, really practical advice. Her talk at PositConf this past year on Python ergonomics was super practical. And yeah, anything that she puts out there into the world is something that I enjoy consuming. And as I said, Ben, who's the director of data science at GSK, I think had some great advice that's probably more general than just even if you're in data science, and it's the importance of saying no. Once in a while, Eric, I have to say no to you or no to this podcast. And as much as we absolutely hate to do it, sometimes we have to ensure that we're keeping the correct balance in our life. And by saying no, it can be a powerful word, but it can bring peace, I think, in your day-to-day life, not only, professionally, but also personally, because we can't do it all as much as we often try to. And as much as I know you often try to, especially. So this was a great reminder as well.
Yeah, I find myself living that a lot these days. Yeah, I'm okay with the no's from you. Sometimes my kids, on the other hand, sometimes they say no a little bit too much, but that's a different story altogether. Oh gosh, almighty. Yeah. In any event, yeah, another example that I thought of where it's a combination of saying no to something, but then also finding a better way to do it was, I had joked with some colleagues at the day job where I made a Shiny app a few years ago that was in essence a glorified PowerPoint slide generator based on dynamic data coming in with some ggplot2 based vector graphics going into a PowerPoint via the Officer package. Again, awesome tooling. Trust me, I really love the Officer package for when I need to do this stuff. But then the time came where I was kind of asked to do this again in a more, I guess, a more simplified way, albeit trying to use the same machinery. And I did try, I really tried, but this template just was not going to cut it. It just was not going to cut it. And I could have brute forced my way. I could have tried to find some clever algorithm to modify the text size based on number of characters going into these cells or these areas of a PowerPoint slide. But I thought, no, you know what? There's a chance to do it a better way. Quartal came to the rescue with Quartal dashboards, a responsive layout for this template where it didn't matter how much text was in it. They could expand that little, expander button in each of the boxes and then get a full screen view of that particular area and then wrap it back down and just zoom in, zoom out as needed. That team loved it, but I probably did too much time trying to retrofit the old approach, but trying to know when to say no, even if it's just to yourself when you're trying to come up with a solution, is a skill that I've had to learn through experience. I'm not great at it, but that was an interesting example this year. I could have said no sooner and done the Quartal thing right away, but it did. Sometimes you do have to struggle a little bit in these experiences to make it happen. But yeah, I really resonate with every one of those posts, and there are all sorts of those nuggets on each of those Hangout sessions. So if you've never been there before, again, Libby's got all the links in this post to those previous recordings, but it's super easy to get that on your calendar and join every Thursday at noon p.m. Eastern for those wonderful Hangout sessions. And certainly I came away, really excited after I had my little session last year. So yeah, lots of fun stuff there. All right, and there's a lot more fun to be had when you look at this entire issue of our weekly that we have curated by Tony this week. And as much as we love to geek out and talk about the rest of the afternoon, we're going to leave you with a couple additional finds before we close up shop here. And I told you earlier in this episode, not too long ago, that sometimes I feel a little imposter syndrome of Bayesian modeling because I did not have a lot of training of that in grad school. And I have some really brilliant teammates that can do wizardry with it. Well, sometimes I just like to see like relatable examples to help connect some dots, if you will. And this post here from Rasmuth Bath is titled "A Bayesian Placket Loose Model in Stan That's Applied to, of all things, Pinball Championship Data." So if I love me some pinball, man. I have lots of quarters wasted on that in the arcade when I was younger. But what a great way to illustrate this great concept of taking what in essence are pairwise comparisons between different items of something, such as when you have, two teams or two players head to head, and be able to predict them. What is the likelihood of winning those particular matches based on this custom Bayesian placket loose model? So they got the great set of formulas here with the R code to reproduce the visuals, and then how to turn that into a stand model, which is a very robust way to fit Bayesian modeling, looking at all the trace plots for kind of the best fit, and then in the end a nice little visualization, kind of hybrid line chart with the dots and the skill of each player to see just who is kind of ranking above the rest in a somewhat forest plot like diagram. So lots of interesting nuggets here for a Bayesian novice like me with a domain that makes you want to turn back time 20 years and go back to the arcade in my hometown. Mike, what did you find?
I found a great blog post from Mael on, it's called Cover and Modify, Some Tips for R Package Development. A lot of it is about maybe the workflow and types of tests, unit tests that you may want to incorporate when you are developing a test for a function that already exists. So some great, little pieces of advice here include, take a look and see in the Roxygen documentation above that function if there is any example code that you can leverage to within the unit test that you need to write for that. These are two types of tests that I commonly write. It's tests that expect type, and you're setting maybe double or character or maybe a table or something like that, a data frame, to make sure that the function is returning the type of object that you are expecting, as well as testing expect equal and actually maybe running some data through that function and ensuring that it is spitting out the number or the value or the character string that you would expect it to return. And as Mael points out, it turns out that those two types of tests have a name, and they are called characterization tests that lend themselves to this concept of cover and modify. So some really interesting little nuggets in here. Again, anything that Mael authors is kind of required reading for me. And as I just mentioned in the last highlight, that one of my passions, if you will, is R package development and management. This is really applicable to that.
Yeah, I feel like you and I need to be accountability buddies to put these principles in practice, because
Yep.
my test-driven development skills are not quite up to snuff yet.
You and me both.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep each other honest on this. But yeah, it's amazing to see, as Mael mentions in the early part of this post, how she's been working with the iGraph R package quite a bit. All these different lessons that she's learning and these different techniques. Isn't that the way, though? We find ourselves knee deep in a project that may not always be comfortable at first, but then we're adapting to, finding new solutions. And then you can take those solutions and use them in the rest of your development workflows. So for me, that whole Quartal thing I just mentioned, I'm now a huge fan of Quartal dashboards because of what I learned because of, putting that for the paces. So yeah, there's always something new to learn. Only one brain in my head, but I feel like I wish I had 2 or 3 of them so I could keep this track more.
If I could convince all my clients to accept HTML output, I'd be right there with you, Eric.
Yeah, I don't say I have it all figured out yet, but at least in this one case, that was like, which one would you rather have? And everybody said, I like that web version. So we're on the way.
Much nicer.
We're on the way.
Yep.
It is very much so. the R Wiki project itself is nice for your R learning. And again, it is a community-based effort. We thrive and we frankly depend on the contributions from the community as we go through your awesome resources that you're authoring on your blogs or authoring these great packages, perhaps even compile with Nix, who knows. But if you want to contribute to the R Wiki project, there are a few ways to do so. First of which is if you find that terrific resource, get it in touch with us, because we can do that via a pull request on the main repo at rwiki.org. There's a link in the upper right corner, that little Octocat ribbon there. You can click that and get taken directly to the pull request template in markdown format, all markdown all the time. You get a very quick primer with that template of what the contribution should be, and you are on your way. And also, we love hearing from you for this very show. We love to have you give us a fun little boost if you're listening to one of those modern podcast apps. I just listened to a fun webinar about the podcasting 2.0 landscape, really nice insights from some of the top developers. So I may put a link to that in the show notes if you want to listen to the post recording on that. But also, you can get in contact with us via our contact page, which is linked in the show notes of this episode. And we are on social media sporadically sometimes, but you can find me mostly on Mastodon. I am at our podcast at podcastindex.social. I am also on LinkedIn as well. In fact, I will be sending a note probably in the next week or so when we put the recordings out from our recent Gen AI Day for R Pharma that took place a couple of weeks ago. There'll be fun talks to watch there. I'll put an announcement on that shortly. And then also you can find me sporadically on that Weapon X thing at the Rcast. And Mike, where can listeners find a hold of you?
Yep, you can find me on Mastodon at Mike_Thomas at fostodon.org, or you can check out what I'm up to on LinkedIn by searching Ketchbrook Analytics, KETCHBROOK.
Awesome stuff. Yep, definitely a fun read as always whenever you put your posts out there. But we can't have much fun much longer. Our day jobs are calling us back. So we're going to close up shop here and wish you best of luck in your data science journeys for the rest of the week. And we will be back with another episode of our Weekly Highlights next week.